In this Carsguide comparison test, we're weighing up whether you should go for a plug-in hybrid or a regular hybrid. And to do so, we've got Australia's most popular SUV, the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, and it's going up against a newcomer, the MG HS PHEV. This Chinese-made alternative is arguably more technologically advanced than our reigning 2019 Carsguide Car of the Year. But which should you pick? Well, that's what we're going to help you find out in this video review, so stay tuned. In this test, the Toyota RAV4 we have is the Cruiser Hybrid all-wheel drive, which has not only impressed us, but is arguably the most in-demand family car in Australia, with long wait times and plenty of demand. Up against it in this test is the all-new MG HS PHEV, which pushes the hybrid petrol-electric envelope even further than its rival. It has good looks, a technologically advanced powertrain, and a pretty clever interior too. Plus, have a look at that drive-away price. Impressive. So, should you plug in or should you go plug-free? Well, by the end of this video, you'll find out which of these SUVs is right for you. But if there's something in particular that you're interested in, you can jump ahead. The time codes are on your screen now, and there's chapter markers in the YouTube timeline below. Also, if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and share this video with your friends if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon to keep up to date with our latest videos. Now, let's take a look at what you get for your money when it comes to these two particular SUVs. $46,000 isn't a small amount of money, but you might be surprised just how much you get for your expenditure when it comes to these two vehicles. You might be even more surprised as to the difference in spec between these two models. Let's take a closer look. Both have full LED headlights with daytime running lights, both have fog lights, but they are halogens, 18-inch alloy wheels, roof rails, a rear spoiler, and LED tail lights. The MG also gets sequential indicators as well. Country buyers might want to take note that the Toyota gets a space saver spare wheel, but the MG only gets a repair kit. There's no spare there. You'll find leather trim inside both models, and while both have electric driver's seat adjustment, the Toyota has manual adjust for the passenger, where the MG also has a power front passenger seat. Both have front seat heating, both have an electric tailgate, and each has keyless entry and push-button start. The MG has a larger 10.1-inch touchscreen media system, where the Toyota's touchscreen is an 8-inch unit. And while the Toyota has a part digital dashboard, the MG gets another 12.3-inch display for the driver, and it looks great too. Both have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto plus sat-nav as well. The MG has a 6-speaker stereo, where the Toyota has a 9-speaker JBL setup. Those are just some of the differences between these two models. If you want to read the full detailed review, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget, the link is in the description below. Make sure you check it out. One's a bit roundy and cute, and the other one's a little bit angry and angular, but these two vehicles are both very close in size, and also perfect for a family of 4, or whether you're a single or couple, they might be just right as an urban runaround. Now, let's take a closer look at the design, and you can tell us below which one you think is the better looking car. White mightn't be the most desirable colour for some buyers, but the RAV4 looks great in this hue. Those blue tinge hybrid badges stand out a bit more, and so do the black alloys on this cruiser grade. The LED lights stand out and still look great even 2 years after the launch of this model. Fair to say the RAV4 is edgier and more aggressive in its look than the MG, which is a touch more derivative and aiming to be less offensive. I don't think that's a problem though, because the proportions of the HS are quite fetching. It's not too bubbly, and the rounded bits actually lend it a level of more approachable appeal that some of its angry-looking SUV rivals can't come close to. The tape measure says the MG is shorter nose to tail, but a little wider than the RAV4, and both are exactly the same height. How they look on the outside is one thing, but what about how they compare on the inside? Let's jump in and take a look. Jump into the RAV4 after you've been in the MG HS and you might feel like you've stepped back in time a little bit because there's a smaller media screen, an 8-inch unit, which isn't quite as big as what you get in the MG, but at least it's got knobs and dials to make jumping between menus a little bit easier because it's not as easy in the MG. And there's also climate control knobs and dials as well, which makes just less fuss going through a screen. And you might hate that. You might be the sort of person who thinks everything should go through the screen. But when you have to wait for menus to load, this setup just works a bit better, trust me. There's also a 7-inch digital instrument cluster for the driver. So it's part digital and part analog. Again, the MG gets a fully digital screen and the RAV4 doesn't. And you might find that a little bit frustrating, and I can understand that criticism a little bit more. In terms of the materials compared to the MG, the Toyota's as good. It doesn't maybe feel as special, but there are still some elements which we love about the RAV4 in this generation and always have, including the dashboard shelf that runs from the passenger side over to the driver's side. So you've got good storage, there's a pair of big cup holders, there's a nice wireless phone charger here for the cruiser grade, and you've also got USB there and 2 USBs in there, which is good. There's big bottle holders in the doors, and the practicality really is on point. You might love the design of the RAV4's interior, or you might not be such a fan, and that's completely fine. Out of these two, you're going to choose one that you like more. We get it. Now, let's talk about backseat space, because there's maybe a little bit more of a discernible difference there. Comparing the backseat experience in the RAV4 and the MG, well, they're pretty close. They're both comfortable and practical and exactly what you'd expect of a mid-size SUV. The RAV4's backseat does have really good legroom, footroom and headroom, and there's a reasonably flat floor as well to allow you to have 3 across if you need to. And again, you've got dual ISOFIX points and 3 top tether points if you have kids that you want to bring on trips with you, or you can just leave them at home. There's a pair of rear seat air vents, there's USB ports down there, and the space in here is really quite nice. I do like the fact that there's quite a lot of glass, and kids especially will love that. I tell you what, there's a reason that so many people are being drawn to the MG brand, and part of it comes down to the interiors, because in the cabin of the HS in particular, it feels really new, and a lot of people who buy new cars want it to feel really new. And compared to the RAV4, it does feel considerably more modern and contemporary in here, because there's digital screen overload. You've got a nice big media screen here and a big driver information screen as well, fully digital. And there's some pluses and some minuses to that, because the screen itself, it's okay, it's really crisp and bright and colorful. And when you've got CarPlay activated, it's really smart as well. But the menus can take some learning and it can be really slow to load. So you've got to spend a bit of time with this car before you understand how this screen works. Same goes for the driver's screen, and it can take a little bit of time to load up when you start the car. So for example, you have pulled up at a parking spot, you need to get away quickly, you've shifted into reverse, the camera won't load quick enough, and this screen won't load quick enough for you to see what your speed is when you're going backwards or taking off. It can take a few seconds, but a few seconds counts, and we all know that. But let's talk about some of the other elements of this cabin, which are quite nice. These seats, very comfortable. They look extremely sporty, and if sportiness is what you're after, I guess that's part of the reason you've come to MG as well, because you've got that association with the old brand. Obviously, this isn't a sports car, but the seats are quite nice. What I don't like about the seats, the driving position. It's way too high. It feels like you're sitting on a bar stool compared to where you should be sitting. I don't love it. And I also don't love a lot of the ergonomics of this cabin. It could be a lot better, and hopefully it will be as time goes by and they improve these models year by year. But there are some other nice things. Pair of cup holders here, covered center console with air conditioning down there, big bottle holders in the doors, and a massive glass roof which has an opening sunroof as well, which is much bigger than what you get in the RAV4, and this is comparatively a relatively affordable car. One more thing, there's a USB ports in here, but when you plug your phone in, if you can get the plug around the right way, there's nowhere really to put your phone there because it doesn't quite fit. That's a little annoying. So you end up putting it there and then you've got a messy cable, which is just a bit frustrating. Anyway, should we check out the back seat? This back seat is more comfortable than most back seats. It's really cushy and surprisingly comfortable on longer trips. We experienced that during our test of this car earlier this week. And it's roomy too. There's plenty of space. I've got lots of knee room and heaps of foot room and a fair bit of headroom too, considering there's a big glass roof back here to contend with as well. It's a really nice back seat experience and made even better by things like rear seat air vents, twin USB ports, matte pockets on both sides. The RAV's only got one on that side, remember? This flip down armrest has these beautiful finishes on the cup holders. Plus there's another little storage box there, which is really quite tidy and nice and padded for your elbows as well. It feels classy back here and it is classy back here. I'd be quite happy back here for a long trip. Whether you're a young family or you're a young couple or just a single, you might be looking at a car like this because you want a level of space and practicality that this size of vehicle offers you. But there is a slight difference when it comes to the cargo capacity of these two SUVs. As you can see on screen, the MG's boot is smaller and there is less space to play with, but you can fit everything in that we fit in the RAV4. And remember, you're going to need to factor in some storage in the MG for power cables too. There is a storage section under the boot floor. You get a home charging cable included, and you can option a wall box for home too. Next up, we'll take a look at the powertrains under the bonnet. There are two different stories to tell here when it comes to powertrain technologies, and both are a little bit complicated. So from here on, we're going to have some graphics that pop up on screen and make this all a bit more digestible. The Toyota combines a 2.5 litre petrol 4-cylinder engine with a 1.6 kilowatt-hour battery pack. And in the case of this all-wheel drive model, there are 3 electric motor generators. The rear axle part of the all-wheel drive equation here is fully electric. Toyota doesn't list a combined torque output, and the RAV4 runs a continuously variable transmission or CVT automatic. The MG has a smaller 1.5 litre 4-cylinder turbo engine which has a higher torque output than the RAV4 and also has a battery pack that's 10 times the size of the Toyota's. It's front-wheel drive though, and you can't get it in all-wheel drive. The MG uses a 10-speed automatic transmission. Remember, you can plug in the MG to charge your batteries using a Type 2 AC plug, and there's a maximum charge input of 7 kilowatts. There's no DC fast charging available either. It should take about 2.5 hours from a wall box or 7 hours from a regular home plug, allowing 63 kilometers of range. What does all that mean in terms of the drive experience? Well, let's find out. We're going to start in the Toyota. Taking off from a standstill in the RAV4, you're going to hear that whirring noise fairly often. It's a fairly familiar tone. We're all used to it here in the Carsguide offices because we've driven this car extensively, and you will get used to it, although what you might not like quite as much is when it kicks over to petrol power. There's quite a bit of noise to contend with. That 4-cylinder engine, it's an Atkinson cycle engine, and they can be noisy. This one is particularly loud. That's a trait across the RAV4 Hybrid range though, and you just have to deal with it. I guess it's made even worse because the car's pretty quiet as it is. There's some road roar to contend with. Actually, I would say this is a touch noisier than the MG overall, but compared to some of its other rivals, more conventional petrol engine cars, it's pretty quiet. The thing about the RAV4's petrol-electric powertrain is that it does really just offer a level of power and performance which gives you a lot of confidence. You're not second-guessing yourself quite as much with this powertrain as you might with that plug-in hybrid because you aren't thinking about battery range quite as much. It's just going to dip into battery power or petrol power depending on what the system thinks you need at that point in time. It takes just a little bit of thought out of the whole driving process, and you might appreciate that more than you'd think. For me though, the real star of the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid show is the way it drives. Not so much the powertrain, but the fact that it's got really good steering and it's got a really competent and confidence-inspiring suspension setup. This is a car that doesn't drive like a mid-sized SUV. It drives a bit more, well, fun than that. You can have fun with this car in corners. You can't in the MG, not to the same extent anyway. The steering's light and accurate and has a really nice response to it as well. And the suspension, sure, it might be a little too firm for some people's tastes, but what that translates to is a real tautness to the chassis, which makes it feel like fun in corners. And I enjoy that. What I don't enjoy quite as much is the brake pedal feel. It's got a real sort of metal on metal ickiness to it, and there's also a sort of weird squeaky noise. If you've driven a Toyota Hybrid, you'll know what I'm talking about, and I can pick up on it. Some other people might not be able to, but all in all, it's doing what it's supposed to do because it's grabbing some energy that would have been lost otherwise and feeding it back into your battery pack. And that's what hybrids are all about after all. So all told, against the MG HS, this is a better car to drive. There's no question about that, and it feels considerably more refined and comfortable, even if it is just a little noisier. I don't mind that. The drive experience in the MG HS PHEV is at times both conventional and also unconventional. And part of that is that it still feels and sounds like a 4-cylinder petrol turbo engine. It's got a bit of a rough grumble to it at times. But then you go into EV mode and it sort of chops and changes between the modes quite happily when you've got enough battery range. At lower speeds, the petrol engine will take over if there isn't enough battery charge, obviously. But when you are in battery mode, there's a nice urban sound that it emits to warn pedestrians that you're coming, because otherwise it's silent. The petrol motor isn't the last word in refinement. It does kick in and have a bit of vibration and noise to contend with, but it is a little quieter than what you'll find in the RAV4, and that's an achievement in itself. The suspension in the MG HS PHEV just isn't quite as sophisticated as it is in the RAV4. It doesn't deal as well with things like speed humps, like we just went over, and also in higher speed corners, it can be really wobbly and a little bit clumsy as well. So if you're after a real driver's car, then this probably isn't going to be for you. Also, the steering, sure, it has some sort of weight to it, but it doesn't offer too much feel. It's kind of like a volume control knob. It does what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't really offer you anything back. The thing about the HS PHEV is that it does switch between petrol driving and EV driving pretty seamlessly. Right now we're in EV mode, but any second now we're going to run out of whatever battery range is left. The petrol engine will kick in and you'll be running on turbo petrol power. And it does a really pretty impressive job of balancing those two elements. And also there's a 10-speed automatic, which seems to do a really good job of choosing what gear you need at what time. And in EV mode, obviously, you don't have gears to play with, it's just point and shoot. And in that situation, there's a fair bit of pulling power available to you as well. This is a pretty quick car when you need it to be, not to say that it's sporty to drive though. Don't expect a really sporty SUV experience if you are shopping for this car. Obviously, you've got regenerative braking, and that feeds power back to the battery pack to keep you moving on EV power as much as possible. And the brake pedal feel, well, it could be better. It doesn't have too much bite to the pedal. Overall, the drive experience isn't quite as polished or enjoyable as in the RAV4, but gee, it offers a lot to like, there's no doubt about that. Here's where it gets really interesting for all you fuel misers out there. There's a massive difference between the combined cycle fuel consumption figures for each of these two models, but there's a good reason for that. Let me explain why. Hybrid technology, like that used in the Toyota, is essentially designed to help you use less fuel all the time. Plug-in tech, as seen in the MG, is always going to be more limited in its application. Once your battery range is up, you will rely more on the engine, which has to lug around a bit more weight than in a non-hybridized car. So the MG's claimed consumption number might be indicative of what you'll see in the first 100 Ks of driving, but not the next 100 or the 100 after that, and so on, where the Toyota's combined cycle number is typically going to be more repeatable. But over our drive loop, which included country, urban, highway, freeway, and twisty road driving, the results were quite a bit closer than the claimed consumption might lead you to believe they should have been. The MG's battery pack ran out of energy after less than 50 kilometers, which is far less than the claim. And if you're going to do long distance driving all the time, then you might need to keep that in mind, because essentially it means you're going to be paying for fuel twice, both at the power point and at the petrol pump. Read the full detailed review for a more comprehensive cost breakdown for the running costs of each of these models. And next, we're going to take a look at the safety specs for these two SUVs. Both have auto emergency braking that works at city and highway speeds, with both offering pedestrian detection, while the Toyota has cyclist detection too. There are lane keeping systems for both models, and both have blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert as well. Auto high beam lights, adaptive cruise control, and speed sign recognition are standard across both. The Toyota has a driver attention monitoring system, which the MG misses out on, and both have surround view cameras. These two each have front and rear parking sensors, while the Toyota has 7 airbags, including driver's knee protection, and the MG has 6. Let's take a look at the ownership promise on offer from both of these brands. Toyota offers a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which extends out to 7 years for the powertrain if you maintain logbook service history, and the battery pack is backed for up to 10 years, so long as you have it checked by Toyota's team annually. MG has an identical 5-year unlimited K warranty for the car, but the battery warranty is 8 years or 160,000 kilometres, no matter whether you have it checked out at MG's dealers or not. The Toyota is backed by an affordable cap price service plan that runs to 5 years or 75,000 kilometres, meaning service intervals are 12 months or 15,000 Ks. There's no MG capped price servicing at the time of filming, and its intervals are annually or every 10,000 Ks. You have to pay for roadside assistance with Toyota, while MG includes 5 years roadside for free. Toyota's cap price servicing and its extendable warranty plan do give it just a slight edge in this part of this test. You might be surprised just how close this comparison test was against the Carsguide criteria, but you'll have to read all about it by hitting that link at the top of your screen, which will take you to the site, and you can have a look at how each of these cars scored against our criteria. But in terms of which is right for you, well, if you can happily operate within the EV-only range of the MG HS PHEV, then it might be the perfect option for you. But if you're going to regularly do longer distance drives, then perhaps the better compromise is actually the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. But we'd love to know what you think, so tell us whether you choose this one, that one, or another one completely. Let us know in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon to keep up to date with all of our latest videos, because there's plenty more coming. Thanks for watching.